Well, having finished my first guitar and getting ready to build my second guitar, I'm putting together a few videos, one on producing templates, doing the design for the new one because it's a slightly larger body and creating templates from them, and the other one on ordering the wood and how I select it and delivering. But they're all done at the moment, so they'll come out when they're ready. So I thought in the meantime, and one of the things I've been intending to do is watch a few factory tour videos for the big guys that build guitars. I've seen one or two in the past, but it's been a while, and this is one that seems quite a good one, so I thought I'll have a look at it and we can watch it together. So let's make a start on that. This is Premier Guitars visiting the Martin factory. I thought this was a good one to start with, as most of my design, you know, the bracing pattern is a Martin bracing pattern, and the neck is a Martin scale length. So
hey, this is John Bollinger with Premier Guitar. We're in Nazareth, Pennsylvania at the Martin Guitar Factory. I'm here with Lee Shagon, who's the instrument design manager here, and he's going to take us through.
I can't wait to show you guys around. So, first time visit?
First time visit, long time fan, long time Martin owner.
Welcome to it, man. You're going to see all kinds of cool stuff here today.
Can't wait. Okay. Okay, so Ramin, where are we looking at here?
We are looking down over our machine room here, and we're going to take a trip into the machine room in the sawmill and get a look at how wood comes in, how we process it, and what basically are the steps to take raw material and turn them into a raw part, basically, as it progresses through the factory.
You know, this is so much different than I imagined it. I was imagining sawdust on the floor, little factory. This is just huge.
We try to keep it pretty clean, and some of these pipes that you'll see around, this is part of our state-of-the-art, world-class dust collection system.
Yeah.
So there is definitely sawdust and shavings on the floor in various areas, but
they've got so much more space to work than I have.
Yes,
yeah.
Serious operation we got going here.
Great, let's jump in.
So we are here in our acclimating area and taking a trip through the sawmill as we get a look at how we process raw wood into guitar parts. And John, what you're holding in your hands here is a really interesting and heavy piece of wood. This is a sort of a parallelogram shaped chunk of mahogany. And as you can see, we have 5 necks laid out on here. These are actually all traced out by hand. Wood, obviously every piece is unique, and there are some jobs that you just can't have a machine do. There's no way. And so it's actually the most efficient for us to mark out each individual neck length by hand with a pencil and then physically cut them out on a bandsaw. What we ultimately want to do is get the absolute maximum yield and minimum waste out of any piece of this material we get. We take it really seriously as an environmental responsibility to not waste wood. These are precious resources.
So it is interesting to think about in the age.
I didn't realise that Martins were one-piece necks. I just assumed that they were built up a heel and a scarf joint. I guess that makes, I don't know if that makes them easy to manufacture or it, not sure it makes them a stronger neck, because the grain in the headpiece is going in a parallel, going across it, so that would lead to a weaker neck. I know people that do that, but then they veneer on the front and the back a bit.
Saw so much wood, and you said this is a small fraction.
Just a taste of some of the wood that we have, that we're very lucky and honored to be working.
There's a fortune in wood there. Must be millions and millions of dollars.
Over 100 years.
I mean, yeah. One of the great things about Martin is being a family-owned company, we have long-term family relationships that go back generations. We have coworkers here, like Tim Teal, we met earlier, our director of instrument design. His grandfather worked here. And that sort of story is very common here. Long-term connections between the Martin family and many employee families that have been in the Nazareth area for almost 200 years.
So a little history. Martin started in 1833 in New York originally, right? And then moved to Nazareth, and you were actually in New York, like Manhattan.
Yes, yeah, Lower Manhattan.
Right?
Yeah, I think at the corner of Hudson and Houston Streets. Is it Houston or Houston?
I think they call it Houston.
Hudson and Houston.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Well, I can't wait to show you guys around our acclimating area a little more here.
Okay, great. Let's see it.
So, John, we're here now in our part of our acclimating room. This is where we do really premium wood selection, among other things. So if you're a custom shop dealer and you want to personally come select some wood for that special project, that special customer, this is where that happens. Also, a place where we store all kinds of necks, and it's a really great place to sort of explain different neck joints. You can see most of these necks looks like they're going to be for standard series guitars, and above they have compound dovetail neck joints. Some of them, for example, have simple dovetail neck joints, and but when you see the scale of it, it's quite something. So here's a one-piece neck, mahogany, very lightweight. It's got a rosewood head plate ready to go. We use these locator pins for matching up with our fixturing, but there's a variety of different materials here as well. For example, here's a maple. Wow. Here's a maple neck, and one thing that's pretty wild about this one is obviously our backs and sides. We do a lot of matching with the wood. Tops and backs are book matched as well, so if you imagine opening up the leaves of a book. We actually do the same process on these maple necks. You can see that this is a beautifully book matched piece of maple, and that the grain all the way through this whole wood between the two halves is perfectly symmetrical relative to the glue joint.
Okay, so aesthetically it's beautiful, I get it. But why go to that much trouble for things that people probably not even see?
We have some structural considerations here, and one of them is the orientation of this grain. So you've heard me mention the term quarter sawn before, and basically what that has to do is the orientation of the grain relative to the stresses on a piece of wood have a huge impact on the strength of that piece of wood in resisting deformation or warping. And so here on this peg head, you can see that the grain is almost perfectly perpendicular to the face of the peg head, and also perpendicular relative to the stresses that are going to be on this when it's under string tension. So this makes for a much more stable.
So that neck was obviously assembled in a different way than we saw earlier. It must have been cut out from two pieces of wood and jointed somehow.
Absolutely. So if you're a dealer or a customer and you have a really special premium project that you're working on, some dream guitar, this is where we would make that happen. And Jakey here is our assistant manager of all the sawmill and machine room, and he's going to show us part of how a book match works, how we evaluate a piece of wood, and how we want to orient a piece of wood to make the most beautiful and structurally sound guitar.
Great.
So what do we got here, Jakey?
So at this point, we have a match set from Guatemala, and I'll show you exactly.
Guatemala rosewood.
Yes.
Wow, I didn't realize it had such that white in it.
Yes, so that's called sapwood, and traditionally, people generally don't like sapwood, and there's reasons for that. Sometimes sapwood can be a little punky, as we call it, so to lack the stiffness or density of the rest of the wood. However, we're able to evaluate that, and it's so visually striking that there is a trend these days, which we think is great, of actually incorporating the sapwood into the design of a guitar. And so you end up with this amazing contrast.
Basically, we're just trying to make it so you're obviously matching the color, the grain, all that fun stuff. But with the sap's a little tricky. You want to make sure that you're incorporating that sap on both the sides and the backs to kind of keep it flush. So really, this is kind of the process we would going through.
So here we can see our template. This is an outline of a guitar. Every piece of wood obviously is not dreadnought sized, so smaller pieces of wood might be earmarked for a single O or a double O or even a triple O. And then on the D, we have templates for everything. They're all matched and numbered, and you can see that the wings of the back here are basically going to incorporate that sapwood into this design.
Wow. It's just amazing seeing these patterns. It looks like a Van Gogh painting. This crazy.
Yes, and obviously, grain is. This is some nice stuff. That's some flat.
I don't think these are going into the standard build. I think these are custom shop inputs.
Trying to incorporate the best can.
I bet
Absolutely.
there are surprises every day.
Every piece of nature is incredible.
Yeah,
You know, every piece of wood is different.
Okay, so where are we now?
Well, John, we're here with Shane down in our sawmill and our machine room. And basically, what we're doing is we're looking at sides. We're going through checking the flexibility, making sure that there are no imperfections, and we're going to look at them with a fine-tooth comb. And if we see any kind of pinholes or knots or any other imperfections, we're going to mark them out. And using this special mark out pattern, we're going to see both the orientation, so where exactly it's going to fall on the side, and if there was something that we wanted to make sure it didn't end up in the final product, this would be the opportunity to check the fit.
It's amazing there's that much flexibility in that wood. Right?
Absolutely, and that's before it's been steam bent or anything. So we haven't even introduced the characteristics, the processes that we're going to use to turn that into that familiar shape. And it still has some flexibility. And that's because it's only about 3 or 4 millimeters thick. So really cool stuff. We're checking them for grain orientation, checking them for any kind of cracks or windbreaks, and knots and pinholes and things like that.
So just to the casual observer, these look like they're perfectly matched. Have you already kind of pieced them together to see what matches together, or are they just...
So far, this isn't very interesting.
A log of wood or a big billet of wood, and you're taking slices out of that.
Okay.
If you take the slice, it's sort of double wide, and then a double thick rather, and then cut that in half, you end up with a perfectly parallel matching. But if you were to mix up your orientation, you can end up with problems, right? Visual problems, structural problems, and with spruce, you see that sometimes in like runouts occasionally, where one side of the guitar will look shinier than the other.
Yeah.
To me, not a big deal. To some customers, it's a big deal. So we try to stay really laser focused on all those aspects. We are looking at a crazy contraption. It's called the clamp carrier. We have a couple of them, and interestingly enough, if you look at old historical photos from Martin Guitar, you can see an almost identical setup. And basically what we use it for is gluing up tops and backs. And as you know, like on a D35, you have a 3-piece back. On a 28 or an 18, we have a 2-piece back. And basically what this does is it allows us to glue up those 2 panels with a back strip in the middle in a perfectly flat, controlled environment with even pressure coming down both from the sort of laterally like this, and from top back like this. And what you end up with is this rotating basically fixture, so that by the time you work through the whole fixture and you've got all, 13 or however, 8 or 9 different clamping areas all full, by the time you get to the last one, it's ready to pull out because the glue is dry.
Okay.
So once that back panel, those panels are glued together with their back strips all dried up, this is what we're left with. And you can see we try to really keep track of what's going on here. So we have a D42, and you can see it's actually noted here, it gets a 45 strip. So this is a 45 style center strip. I've always thought it kind of looks like a tire tread mark, like a really beautiful, beautiful tire tread, but that design goes back well over 100 years. So this is going to be on a really nice high-end D42, beautiful poker straight grains on that rosewood. And something really special here, we have just launched a new body shape, new body size, which is very unusual for us. Whenever we do that at Martin, it's kind of a big deal.
Right.
This, and when I say a big deal, this is going to be what's called a super dread.
It looks huge. Is it going to be this big?
Yes, a super dreadnought.
Wow.
It's about 15 to 20% more internal air volume. It's funny too, because when you play it, you're like, it feels like a big guitar, but until you see it next to a standard dreadnought, you really don't have a sense for just how big it is. These things sound incredible in the bass, and these are like scientifically numbers where you think that can't possibly be right, but we saw a boost in the bass frequencies, certain bass frequencies, 12 dB.
Wow.
It's nuts. It's like twice as loud. Now in the mids and trebles, you're talking more 3 to 6 dB boosts.
Yeah.
Really incredible. But here you can see some of these panels. So this is our custom expert program.
Notice it's a 3-piece back. Can't get big enough wood, or they're using smaller pieces of wood glued together.
A mix of wood. This is a Guatemalan rosewood. It looks like on the edges and maybe a darker Guatemalan in the middle. Just like unbelievable contrast, especially to think these are essentially the same species of wood, and yet they look so different.
God, that's wild.
Gorgeous stuff.
Although the bending machine is very complicated, it really only fulfills the same feature as my bending plate joining plate that I made, pressing the two plates together and holding them down.
Visual aspects of the instrument.
Oh, it's so cool.
As you can see, we've come back to the giant guitar, and this actually used to be a parade float. So they built this in the 80s, I think maybe 82 or 83, and they marched it down Main Street, and some employees were inside waving out to the public. But it's a wonderful visual reference for showing you what is going on inside the guitar. So even though it's obviously over scale, it actually really does a good job of showing what the internal lattice structure is of the bracing. You can see your cross brace, your bridge plate, your tone bars, your back braces, and it's a really great way to sort of introduce you and your viewers to the thing that they're all familiar with, which is the X-braced acoustic guitar. But many of them may not know that Martin invented the X-brace.
So right here.
Yes. So this is our baby, something we're very proud of in the history of the company, and really led the way for guitars to be strong enough to be strung with steel strings, or metal strings at all. I guess they probably used some sort of nickel cobalt or nickel alloy back in the day. But basically, prior to the invention of the X-brace, guitars were strung with gut strings.
Yeah.
So we call them gut strings. It's very Shakespearean, but really it's a reference to the fact they were made from animal intestines and veins, basically sinew, right?
Wow.
So that's still common in the classical world, especially bowed string instruments. That's a different kind of sound. But in the era before amplification, people were always looking for ways to make their instruments louder. How can it compete, for example, with a banjo or the fiddle that you're playing with? So the X-brace paved the way for all of that. And the way that was invented, sometime around the mid-1840s, Mr. Martin was basically experimenting and came up with this new structure. So previously, guitars were braced with a fan brace, and we still make some fan brace guitars. It's very common in the nylon string world. Or they would be ladder braced, which you see on a lot of inexpensive Depression-era instruments where they'd have braces that are going sort of transverse across the top. It's a different kind of sound. It's a little tinny, but it's not the sound that people have come to expect from a quality acoustic guitar. And it's almost the chicken and egg kind of question. Which came first, the X-brace or the Martin guitar, or the expectation that that's what a guitar should sound like? And I think we have a wonderful and maybe even unfair advantage in that regard, because Martin guitar has been around since before the advent of recorded music. We've been around at the highest level of quality for so long that even on those early recordings of a guitar, it almost created the expectation that that's what an instrument is supposed to sound like. Because that was the highest quality guitar at the time. That's what people were recording with in the days of Thomas Edison. And so is it the chicken or the egg? Does it sound great because it's a Martin guitar, or is it a Martin guitar and that's why it sounds the way we expect a guitar to sound?
Yeah, define the tone.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we love that. To me, there's nothing more sort of classic in all those songs. You can really hear you say, oh, yeah, that's probably a Martin.
Yeah.
I find that very satisfying. I know many of my coworkers do too.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a look here at how the braces get applied to a guitar top, what kind of handwork goes in.
So all steel string guitars are really copies of those original Martins.
That throughout the factory of old school handwork and ultra precise modern manufacturing techniques incorporated into one approach. So we are slightly ahead of the process, but basically what we're going to watch is Jonna here is gluing braces onto the top of an instrument. So you can see she's got her glue wheel. She's applying glue evenly to the underside of the brace, and the top she has selected there, it's in a heated bracing press.
Okay.
And basically what we're doing is we're going to put the braces in their correct locations, which have been marked out using one of our various bracing mark-out patterns. And once they're all in the right spot, we have to work pretty quickly to make sure the glue doesn't start to dry. But once they're all in the right spot, we'll actually bring down the overhead lid of this device, and a suction process will begin. So we have these latex bladders, and they're going to pull down evenly upon all the braces to fuse them to the top, basically, and it's heated from underneath to help accelerate the glue drying time. So we're kind of in the middle of things here, getting to see braces go on. If we go backward, we're going to get to see some huts and backs being cut out before they come here.
So this is what they use instead of a go bar deck.
New technology and old technology. So very old school and very new school. What you see here is sort of the pinnacle of precision when it comes to profiling shapes out of a flat piece of wood. So this is a laser machine. It's a laser table. And what it's doing is, based on the inputs that our friend Rocket Man is going to put in there on the computer, it's going to cut out the shape of a top or a back or even a side. It can also cut out bridge plates and things like that. So we have some mahogany tops, it looks like, being cut out. Those might be 15 series guitars someday when they're all done, when they grow up, you know.
Sure.
And you see those funky ears there on the side of the instrument with those holes. Oh, that's not really part of the shape of the guitar. That's something that we use for our pick string. So at this point, we're going to...
They're using a very similar method of me to index their jigs together with those ears at the side, as they call them.
Now it tells us where, relative to the final shape of the instrument, where we want to put that piece of wood. Once again, to avoid any imperfections and to get the most beautiful, structurally stable top at the end of this lasering process. So what we're going to do here is a process called candling. And back in the day, you would take a candle, you know, a single light source in a dark room, and you'd hold up a wood panel against the candle so you could see through the thin piece of spruce. And why would we want to do that? Well, from the outside, if you can ignore these circled areas here, you can see we have what looks like a really nice piece of spruce, right?
Yeah.
Aha. But the truth is going to come out when we backlight it. So now we're candling this piece of wood. And as you can see, even though it looked pretty nice from the outside, we have a sap pocket there or something, some kind of pinch pocket, some kind of transverse line that looks like if we start sanding on that, it might become visually unappealing. It might even be structurally unstable. So you never know how deep these things are. You never know once you start working that wood if that's going to pop up to the surface and be really a problem. We have templates for every single shape and style of body that we make. Left-handed orientation, right-handed orientation. A lot of the other ones will have cutaway marks on both sides. And the reason we have all this is so that we can actually hold it over a piece of wood. So if we were to, we know our center line is non-negotiable. The center line has to be in the center. But vertically, we have a lot of room to play around with how we locate the guitar top out of this piece of wood. So if we have it here, then this sap pocket is going to be exposed later on down the line, potentially, as we sand on that guitar body. But if we lift this up a little bit, now all of a sudden, we know that that's going to be covered up by the bridge. We know that this one can be
Cut out all the way down.
exactly cut out in the sound hole. Basically, at this point, we can make sure that the guitar is going to not be impacted by any of these imperfections. So, John, what we're watching here is part of our brace carving and shaping process. Sitka spruce is an incredible material. It is so strong relative to its weight, so we call that the strength to weight ratio. And basically, it's so lightweight and so stiff with the right grain orientation that people used to use this stuff to build airplanes. You might think these are small changes that are happening to the braces, but for every 20% of height that you add or subtract from a piece of spruce like this, you're gaining or losing 50% of its weight-bearing capacity. Wow. So these very small changes in peaking the braces to remove excess mass, for example, while retaining the stiffness and the shape of that triangle, that pyramid shape, feathering braces out to nothing, these are not random decisions. These are all...
amazing how much wood she's taking off.
It's wild.
They're right down to nothing.
So calculated. That's actually going to be feathered down to nothing. and when the rim of the guitar is actually glued on, it's going to compress there. So it's...
I'm surprised at this. I didn't think that Martin was still scalloping braces by hand, and I'm wondering if this is a custom shop.
They're long, they're oversized, and they're roughly in the right profile, but they're not very elegant, and they certainly have not been treated in a way to remove excess mass without removing the strength. So that's what that pyramid shape does for us. Like a triangle, very strong. Like a sphere, also very strong shape. Those arched bridges, for example. So when the process is all done, you can see we have perfect little peaks here. We have a slightly more troughed out tone bar. We have feathered brace tips all the way down to nothing. And we're even going to clean them up with some sandpaper just to take out any chisel marks. Well, John, you've seen sides being selected and matched and laid out. Now we're going to see what actually happens in order to get that familiar shape that we've come to know and love, that beautiful outline of a guitar. So in order to bend the sides of the instrument, we take these thin pieces of wood, like I mentioned, maybe 3.5 millimeters thick, and we're going to apply steam to them. Steam, which we generate through soaking them or dampening them with wood or water. Sometimes we'll use additives in the water if we have a really stiff piece of wood, for example. And then we'll use heat and pressure to turn that water into steam, and that will allow the wood to relax into the shape as we bend it against a form. Now, the first step in getting a really good glue joint is to make sure that your surfaces are nice and clean. You don't have any debris or anything else that's going to interfere with the gluing up of two pieces of wood. And so the first thing we do, we actually cleaned our cauls here and our base plate to make sure that everything is looking good. Then we're going to take our set of sides, we locate them, sort of a bump fit against these specially made front and rear block clamping cauls. Once those are secured in position using those throw clamps, we're going to take our front block and our rear block, and using a paintbrush, we're going to apply glue to the gluing surfaces there. So it doesn't take a lot of glue, but again, you can see our operator there has just cleaned off around the edges so we don't get too much squeeze out. The clamps go on nice and easy. They're slotted into position, so it's pretty straightforward.
I'm surprised they're not in a body mold here. The whole
rim is ready to be liberated, come out, inspected. We're cleaning up our surface so we can glue the next one. And we'll even go in there in a moment with a sharp chisel or a knife wrapped around with that nice cloth and clean up the glue, squeeze out now while it's fresh. So what Patrick is doing here, he's actually got a piece of this ribbon lining and he is gluing it on the inside of the rim of the guitar. And what that does is, because as you know the sides are so thin, if you were to glue the top and back directly onto the sides of the rim, you really wouldn't have much surface area holding that guitar together. And so to create a...
Even Martin used clothes pegs.
top and back to adhere to, we actually take this and glue it in with the orientation such that this big flat piece is on the top or back. And then once it's in the inside of the rim, we're going to sand the whole thing flat. So you have a nice, 1/4 inch wide gluing surface instead of that 3 millimeter wide gluing surface. The next step in assembling the body of the guitar is actually going to be to apply the top and back onto.
Now it's in a frame.
You can see Steve actually pocketed out inside the ribbon lining. He made some pockets for the braces to actually tuck into. And you can see those here, here, and further on down the line. And the reason for that is so that when you glue the top and back on, not only are the brace tips secure, so if they were going to want to come loose, they can't. They're physically restrained from doing so. But when you look inside the instrument, it's so clean and so pretty. And it just...
Fingers to spread the glue.
We talked earlier about how we kind of sweat the small stuff here at Martin. These brace tucks, those are on the top of the instrument. So you literally, unless you were to go inside the instrument with a mirror, you're never even going to see the detail level of craftsmanship that's really happening inside there. But we do it anyway because we really care about that. So again, precision glue applicator, also known as your fingertip, does the job just fine. We don't need a special tool for that. So here goes the top, perfectly aligned into the brace tucks. And we're going to do the back next. Those pins help make sure nothing shifts during the glue-up process. Now, you may be wondering about the funky metal form around the guitar. That's a casting form. And basically what that does is it serves a couple purposes. One, it holds everything together during the glue-up process. Two, it is a final check to ensure that you've bent things to the right dimensions, that the guitar is going to fill out the form properly, that the body is going to be consistent with other instruments of that body size and shape. And third of all, it allows us to hold the sides, hold the rim steady when we do our rim sanding, which we didn't get to see, but essentially what you're doing is applying a dished sanding tray and sanding off any excess material to make sure that the rim, that the sides, and the...
I think what he's trying to explain here is that the back and top have got a dome on them, and you have to sand the body to the dome. You've seen that on my build series if you've watched that, on a radius dish.
With herringbone, whether it's a 45 with pearl all the way around the outside, or an 18 with a simple binding and inlay. And the way we achieve all that is here through what we call the phrasing process. This is a really difficult job. And what Mercedes is doing is she has a spindle that's coming off of that machine that has a cutter package on it. And a lot of mathematics goes into figuring out exactly how to do this. So we have, as you can see, all these different rub collars and cutter packages, and every one of them is going to be appropriate for a certain type of binding trim. And the end result is a consistent channel or ledge, which is then going to result in a really beautifully, visually appealing, and also an instrument that is protected against dinks and dents from the outside. Sure. Without the binding, if you were to take a sharp rap on the corner of a guitar body, the top and back would separate, right? But with the binding, you have a softer material. It's like a shock absorber, ready to absorb those blows.
Taping their binding as well. What I was trying to see, and I can't see anywhere, is when they take the X-brace into the side, do they take it through the side and therefore cover it with the binding like I did, or do they just go into the kerfing?
It would have been done with a rope, which is why they called it binding, because you would be binding the whole instrument with a ribbon or a rope to actually pull all that tight.
I've seen people use surgical tape or surgical stretchy tape or surgical elastic for holding it on as well.
For purpose. When it comes off, we're going to have a really beautiful instrument. So we've talked a lot about guitar bodies as they're going through here. We've seen the bracing, we've seen the side bending, we've seen so much to do with bodies and not a lot to do with necks. And I want to reassure you that the necks aren't going through the factory as well. Yeah. They definitely are. They're on a separate track. But this is the first point at which a guitar body and neck are going to be mated together. So we call this our pre-fit area. And we discussed some of our neck joints a little earlier, and I will show you those again. This is a compound dovetail neck joint, which means that it's dovetailed in two different axes, two different dimensions. It'll be really easy to visualize this when we see a loose front block and a loose neck in a few minutes. But essentially what Chad is doing right now, he's got this neck pre-fit, and he's going to cut the heel down to the correct length. Oh, wow. So that it lines up perfectly. When he puts that heel cap on, that the trim, the black, white, black, and then the final layer are going to line up exactly with the trim that's in the side of the instrument. We glue our necks in place, but these things are mated so well and so closely that I don't want to hype anyone up too much, but I am confident that you could probably string up a guitar that's been pre-fit like this. It's been nicely neck fitted, even without glue. And I would feel 85% confident that you could string it up and it would hang together just fine. Wow. Now, of course, we don't do that. Yeah. We glue a lot. But you'd be amazed at the strength and structural stability that a properly executed compound dovetail joint will give you against that 200 pounds, 180 pounds of string tension. Sure. It's amazing. So The reason that we pre-fit necks here, even though the guitar neck has to go through finishing still, is that the dimensions are going to change further on down the line. When you sand the body, when you apply finish, you thicken, you add some coats on.
I think I'll have to have a look at the Taylor one, because Taylors do a bolted tenon joint like I'm doing, rather than dovetail.
To do that final mating. So this is sort of like we call it pre-fit, and that's exactly what it is. These things, they're tagged, they're serialized, they're going to go through the factory, they're separate ways, but they will come back together in final assembly.
Is it difficult to get it out once it's in there?
Oh, you got to use a hammer.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. And it's a testament to the resilience. I know many guitar players, like, we baby our instruments, we take really extra good care of them, but in the process of building these things, they come into contact with some serious tooling, whether it's a bandsaw or a hammer or a fretting hammer or something. You can't baby them during the building process. Much like the binding that you saw going on the guitar bodies, sometimes fingerboards get bound as well. But you can see that it's slotted, and these slots obviously have to be in very precise locations. The ratio, the relationship,
Non-negotiable.
you can't get around it unless you're going fretless, which is a little extra weird. But we have such a variety of fret wire here, all the way from old school bar frets, which are available through the custom shop only, to gold Evo fret wire, and different crown heights, different.
On my last guitar, I didn't bind the fretboard. On this one, I'm thinking about doing it. It adds an extra complexity, but
Or with a hydraulic press that comes down and pushes them all in all at the same time. And once they're in there, we actually are going to snip all the excess material off the edges of the fret. We don't want to play that guitar. That's like a recipe for a disaster. And then we're going to actually come in and bevel the nice edge. The nuts get installed later on, so I'm not sure why we have a nut on this visual aid here, but that's all right. And once the board gets glued onto the neck plank, then we'll have the nut go on there. We'll trim up the head plate, make sure everything fits nice and flush, and then they're going to go get shaped. So John, this is Eric. He's one of our highly skilled operators here.
Good to meet you.
Eric's in neck shaping, and maybe he can tell you a little bit about what he's working on.
I got a D42 Modern Deluxe right here, and 18 Authentic right over here. Now, this one right here is going to have a thinner barrel on it. It's going to have a nice boot on the back, extended out to the Modern Deluxe series.
The diamond.
Yeah.
Diamond. Oh,
Diamond is
cool.
a beautiful piece right there. These
Yeah.
are hand shaped, and then we hand sand them. So this is our finishing touch-off while the 18s do not.
Oh.
This is going to be following our classic spec that R&D worked really hard to perform and match to a 37, I think.
Oh, right.
So this has a nice full thickness to the barrel, it's going to be a lot thinner and smoother to play up and down.
So the shape of a guitar neck is absolutely critical for the comfort of the player. It can be it's the point of interface where you're really interacting with the guitar the most.
Sure.
And it can make or break your experience. The first step in getting that perfect mirror finish on a marked guitar is starting with good surface prep. So here what we're doing is we're sanding up these guitar bodies.
there's still a lot of hand sanding going into this.
It takes a steady hand, but a good eye, and you got to know when to quit. So it takes a lot of experience and a lot of skill to do this job, and to make sure you're doing it well. That's why we got skilled guys here like Glenn. They're standing in there, getting in the way. What you see here is the first coats of lacquer that have been applied to this instrument. So our lacquering goes through a multi-step process. The first step after all that surface prep is we get 4.
I'm pretty sure that Martin used nitrocellulose, which is a lovely finish, but it's just...
days. Basically, once this first set of coats has had a chance to cure, then the guitars will get what's called a first sand, a sandback. So you'll go through with 320 grit sandpaper. You'll knock back most of the shiners, or the fish eyes, or the pinholes, or all the other, or the orange peel, all the million different terms we have to describe things that can go wrong with finish that that don't look good. So we knock all that stuff out of there, and then they get inspected. So in the event that there's a little air bubble or something, that's going to be taken care of. It's going to be drop filled with lacquer, drop filled with glue if necessary, to make sure that everything...
I'd love to be able to natural cellulose coat them like this on my guitar, but it's such an environmental problem in terms of it's toxic and I haven't got the space to set up a spray room with breathing apparatus.
Hypnotic, actually. If the polishing robot is running, I can't wait to show that to you. You're going to really get a kick out of it. Now, we still do have to polish this guitar by hand. Every one of these instruments needs to be hand polished. It'll go through the same process yet again a few more times. But this initial rough cut is what we call it. This is an abrasive wax compound that's on the wheel. So that big wheel that's spinning there, it has an abrasive wax compound on it, and the robotic arm is going to suction cup the guitar body up and actually rub the guitar against that wheel, so that initial buffing with the most aggressive abrasive wax is going to be handled by the robot. Basically what we're doing here is we're moving around the lacquer. We're removing any little scratches that are left over from the initial sanding process. So this is going to reorient that lacquer in the heat. We'll physically move it around a little bit, and what you end up with is a guitar that's ready for the hand treatment that it's going to need later to get that perfect mirror shine. So necks, of course, we don't have a machine to do the necks. Those still need to be polished up by hand in the event that a guitar gets a full gloss neck. Although it's more common that people prefer a satin neck these days, just because it's not as sticky. You know, unless you move around. You start with the satin neck, and as you play it, it will shine up eventually. Over the years, and get your own sort of battle scars and stuff. Sure. But yeah, I mean, you can watch this thing run forever.
Okay, so final assembly.
Absolutely. So as you can see, we have a dysfunctional guitar here. We got a ghost bridge. This is not going to work out, but it's a critical step in making sure we have a good glue joint. Again, it all comes back to good wood-on-wood contact, making sure that we're not gluing wood to paint. Because if you glue wood to wood, you end up with a glue joint. You do it properly, that's stronger than the wood on either side, right? But if you glue wood to paint, the paint is going to let go, and you're going to have a bad time, as they say. So what we have is, first, this instrument has been through our automated neck fit machine, and it's got a neck that's fitted on here. The pre-fitting of the dovetail really helps to get that pretty close. We do hand fit necks still when necessary. And then we have this bridge pocket router machine. Basically what that does is we're going to load the guitar in there. It will index off the nut, and at exactly the right location, it's going to cut a pocket through the paint to the wood as thin as possible to make sure that we have a great gluing surface for that bridge to adhere to. Now, our folks who are working in this area, they have to be careful. There are certain hand creams that you can't use because it could contaminate the glue joint. Even the oils from your skin naturally could do so. Anything that could interfere with the glue up is, sort of controlled substances here at Martin. We want to make sure we're not doing anything that could compromise the integrity of the glue joint. But at that point, the bridge can be glued in. We have a variety of different bridges here to show you. Here's the standard modern belly bridge. Here's an older bridge. It's got these ramped slots. Here's a straight line bridge, very old school with the pyramid tips on the bridge wings. And of course the big boss hog there, the 12-string bridge, which you can see if you were to try to glue something like that that's got 200 plus pounds of tension pulling on it, you better make sure you're gluing wood to wood, because if you glue wood on the paint, you're going to have a bad time, man. Well, this is the end of the line for a Martin guitar, from soup to nuts. This is where the rubber meets the road, so to speak. And these instruments are getting strung up for the very first time. So our final assembly and stringing department is full of folks who are really passionate about guitars. They're mostly guitar players. They do a few different processes here. So basically, before any of these guitars are ready to leave the factory, they need to be strung. They need to be set up. We use fleck machines for the most part to get the fretwork perfect. We still know how to do fretwork by hand, of course, but Almost all of our instruments are going to get plecked.
Oh.
If they get electronics, those will get installed here. And this is
Pleck machines seem to be getting everywhere. If you've not seen them, a pleck machine is a measurement and alignment. It's a computer that goes into a kind of measurement thing of the neck and gives you a report exactly how the neck is in terms of any distortions in it, anything that needs doing. And they only came out a few years ago, but they said they're using them. I know some of the Luthers around in the UK are using them now when they refret. It's not something I'm going to ever do. I think the machines are about 10 or 15,000. But I think it makes it quicker rather than better. As he said, they can still do them by hand.
Needs a little adjustment. It needs to get used to being a guitar, right?
Sure.
First time this piece of wood has been under this kind of tension. So if something was going to let go, for example, if something was going to belly up too much, if your action is going to rise a little bit because your neck relief has risen a little and it's under tension now, and suddenly things are moving, we want to make sure we take care of that before it goes out the door. So we let them sit
4 days.
4 days,
Yeah.
and then we open the caves back up and we re-inspect them. And nothing leaves the building until it's been through a 4-day hold and re-inspection period. Thank you guys so very much for visiting us.
So some things in that were interesting. It's a bit wordy and there's a lot of fluff in it, I think. Let me know in the comments what you think about this. Yeah, am I wasting my time doing this? Are you actually interested in this? I might do 1 or 2 more. Takamine their process looks quite interesting. Although now I've seen this, it looks similar. Somebody I know, a guitarist in the UK that I met, and she performs on YouTube. She also tours. Martin made her a signature model in the custom shop, and she went over there to discuss that. That might be an interesting one, because it's a very different look than this. Okay, I think that's it anyway. So let me know in the comments if I'm wasting my time here. Yeah, I don't know how much people like reaction videos, but it's a bit of a filler to keep the channel going between. Well, I'm trying to put the other stuff together for the next guitar. And there might be, as I said, from now on it's going to be a little more erratic. I'm not doing a full build series again, but I'll do things like if I bind the neck, I will film that in. I'm going to do some inlay for the headstock on the next one. What else was I thinking? It's going to be different. It's a different body size. I'm going to do a video on designing, drawing, making templates. Which I didn't really do on the last one. So I'll see. I'm going to try and only kind of do videos when I've got something new to show, because there's no point in repeating what we did before, or something I missed on the last one.